Relay, we're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Earlier today in Seoul, South Korea, reigning WBA super featherweight champion Hyun Mi Choi was in action in defense of her WBA super featherweight title against at least what I think was voluntary challenger Vanessa Bradford of Canada. To my knowledge, that wasn't a mandated title fight. That was a voluntary title defense. And, every time Hyun Mi Choi gets out there now, she just doesn't look sharp. Every time she gets out there, she doesn't look sharp, doesn't look inspired, looks flat. That likely has a lot to do with the schedule that Hyun Mi Choi has been keeping the last 4 going on 5 years. Hyun Mi Choi has only been boxing once a year for the last 4 going on 5 years. This year, in all likelihood, this Vanessa Bradford title defense will be the only fight she has the entirety of the year. That is, unless she squeezes in another fight in what remains of 2022. Not likely. Hyun Mi Choi's reigned as this division's WBA champion for 9 years. 9. You'd never know it to look at her. You'd never know it to see her in action, that she has reigned as this division's WBA champion for that amount of time, that here today she is the longest reigning champion in the 130-pound division. One of 2 champions, Alicia Baumgardner. Alicia being the only other champion at this weight. Unified WBC, WBO, IBF, Ring Magazine, and lineal champion Alicia Baumgardner, who was just in action this past weekend as the co-main event to the main event, Shields versus Marshall, against her domestic adversary, then champion Michaela Mayer. We all know what happened. We all know who won the fight. Making the outcome of this fight between Hyun Mi Choi and Vanessa Bradford, all that more relevant. Hyun Mi Choi is in possession of the last brass ring, the last puzzle piece to the super featherweight puzzle. Hyun Mi Choi, who took some shots in this fight with Vanessa Bradford, took some shots to where if Vanessa Bradford had a little bit more pop, a little bit more mustard on those shots, she probably could have took Hyun Mi Choi out. There are defensive deficiencies there. There are holes that can be exploited. That's not saying that Hyun Mi Choi didn't land some hard shots of her own. She did. She got off some punches, connected pretty good at times. But so did Vanessa Bradford. And Vanessa Bradford, God bless her, she's a journeywoman. As I watched this thing in the wee hours of the morning on Instagram Live, where it was being shown, as I watched this thing, what resonated with me the most is that Hyun Mi Choi simply doesn't have the appearance of this division's longest reigning champion. She doesn't have the appearance of an unbeaten 2-division champion that has reigned as this division's longest reigning champion for the past 9 years. She just doesn't look it, and you wouldn't know it to look at her unless somebody told you. She looks like fish food. Fish food for Alicia Baumgardner. As the world watches and waits to see what Hyun Mi Choi will do next, there are doubters, there are skeptics that, given her defensive deficiencies, fighting Alicia Baumgardner seems like certain defeat. And because of this, there are those out there who don't think she'll share the ring with her. But need I remind you that a little-known, unbeaten up-and-comer that goes by the name Ramona Graf of Germany, a sports professional record of 4 wins, no losses, and no draws, she's the WBA's #1 contender. She's the WBA's gold champion. And the WBA is currently in the process of a world title consolidation effort to limit the number of titles that are given weight to just 1. Just 1 per division. To the chagrin of Hyun Mi Choi, there's a chance that in the very near future, the WBA may order her to fight unbeaten up-and-comer, amateur standout of Germany, Ramona Graf. See, what you have to ask yourself is, do you want to lose to some 4-0 greenhorn? Because you might. Or would you rather lose with dignity, with grace, with integrity, to a fellow champion in an undisputed run, an undisputed effort? What do you want to do? Tell her what she better do. She better do something, because she's running out of time. Listen, I'm not trying to be hard on the old girl. There's a real human interest story in there when it comes to Hyun Mi Choi. She defected from North Korea to South Korea and made a life for herself. Picked up boxing and became a boxer, became a champion, and reigned as one for 9 years. But here today in 2022, the walls are closing in. Ramona Graf is hot on a trail. If for some reason Ramona passes on a world title shot, a world title opportunity, do you know who's behind Ramona? Delphine Persoon. You think Delphine Persoon would pass up on the opportunity to pick up another alphabet title? You think Delphine Persoon would pass up on the chance to take on Hyun Mi Choi? You think she wouldn't like to get one of the 2 remaining champions at super featherweight in the ring? Any way you slice it, the walls are closing in on Hyun Mi Choi. It's just a question of how do you want to lose? Do you want to lose with integrity? Or do you want to lose trying to play it safe just to have things go sideways anyway? Because that might happen. Why specifically Hyun Mi Choi hasn't been more active the last 4, going on 5 years? Your guess is as good as mine. Is it a financial issue, financial constraints that prevented her from being a more active, and thereby a sharper boxer? Is that what it is? Was it a fiscal issue? Because the last 4 going on 5 years, the woman's only fought once a year. Once a year for the last 4, going on 5 years. And that doesn't help a fighter's sharpness and killer instincts. You're certainly not going to grow as a fighter or continue to grow on a schedule like that. The super featherweight division is not a barren weight class. It's not a barren division. The talent pool is getting deeper with unbeaten up-and-comers like Ramona Grave, France's own Rima Ayadi, veterans and former champions like Delphine Persoon, and current reigning champions like Alicia Baumgardner, who's taken the sport by storm and in many ways is the face of today's super featherweight division. She just needs that last brass ring. And I think, for what it's worth, Alicia Baumgardner can make it worth Hyun Mi Choi's while, more so than many other fighters, former champions, because she's with a major promotional outfit. At least if you lose to Alicia, there's no shame in it. You lose with dignity. You lose with grace to one of the best fighters in the division. I think Hyun Mi Choi's handlers need to hurry up and cash her out before one of these other girls get their hands on her. It's a common sense argument. In this sport, it's an occupational hazard. A loss is always right around the corner, more so for some fighters than others. In this situation, Hyun Mi Choi, she's in a pickle. There's a loss right around the corner for her, so it's a common sense argument at that point. Which loss gets you the most money? That's Alicia Baumgardner. So you might as well cash her out. Hurry up. Get it over with. She's managed to hang on to the WBA title a little while longer. She's done that successfully. And she still is a champion. She still is a champion here today. But if she tries to swerve the undisputed title fight with Alicia in order to try and extend her reign as a champion, stay out of harm's way, what she'll find is that has become increasingly difficult to do in this division. The time is now. In men's heavyweight news, a familiar pattern that I've been noticing and talking about here on the channel. Chris Arreola to Anthony Joshua, don't be a bitch, let's make this motherfucking fight happen. Chris Arreola's gunning for a Joshua fight. He says those conversations have been happening behind the scenes. Says the Joshua fight is one of the things that has been in the works. I'll take that fight. I love it. Joshua, don't be a bitch. Let's make this motherfucker happen, bro, Arreola told ES News. I'm a fighter. I love fighting, so let's fucking fight. Let's make it happen. Here, there, wherever you want to make it. This rumor's been around a little over a week. Chris Arreola being in the running for a Joshua fight. Is he? I said it then and I'll say it again here and now. I don't actually think Chris Arreola was ever in the running for a Joshua fight. Perhaps he was in the running for a Dillian Whyte fight, but now we know Dillian Whyte's going to be facing unbeaten American up-and-comer Jermaine Franklin. As far as Arreola versus Joshua, Eddie Hearn already dispelled those rumors. Chris Arreola ain't in the running for a Joshua fight. And I don't think he ever was. If I'm being honest, I think that Chris Arreola himself is likely the one that started this rumor to keep his name in circulation so he can continue to get fights. I mean, you've got Luis Ortiz saying he wants to fight Anthony Joshua in December. You have Chris Arreola saying he wants to fight Anthony Joshua. He's going a step further. He's actually saying that's in the works. Whereas Eddie Hearn, he's saying the exact opposite. Better not be. Eddie's not stupid. There's no market for a Joshua versus Arreola fight. Chris Arreola, a remnant of the Klitschko era, the Vitaly Klitschko era. Nobody wants to see that fight. Ortiz wants a Joshua fight. Arreola wants a Joshua fight. Shelly Finkel, he's still throwing that guy's name around, saying the Joshua fight is as enormous as ever. Still dangling that carrot in front of Wilder's fans. We said at a press conference, it depends what surfaces this week, whether it will be Alexander Usyk or Hearn reaching out. It's funny with Eddie. He made all these big statements before. Oh, I tried and tried. Shelly Finkel won't talk to me. I said we could talk to him, but after the fight, because that is when it makes sense. That is what the reality is. I always said there was no reason to have spoken before the fight, but we're always willing to talk to him, Finkel told The Sun. Finkel is ruling out the possibility of having Wilder travel overseas for a fight with Joshua. I was asked if they offered the right deal, would we do the fight in the UK? Of course. Financially, it could be Saudi Arabia or another country, but it really comes down to them, Finkel said.
The problem with Shelley's logic is that had he had that dialogue with Eddie
ahead of what eventually was the Robert Helenius fight, they would have been further along in those conversations by now. They would have had more traction.
The Joshua people aren't going to wait around for you. They tried to get in contact with you. You wouldn't give them the time of day. It is what it is.
I believe the fight between Deontay and Joshua will do 80,000 at Wembley. 2 or 3 years ago, when Joshua and us did not make the fight, he had options, and he was on top of the world. Right now, he doesn't have many options, and if Fury fights Usyk, the only real big fight out there for Joshua is us. But it's up to them. The important thing, without getting into a big dialogue with Eddie, was to wait until after the fight and then decide. If Deontay lost, there would be no fight. But now we'll see. The fight is as enormous as ever.
Yeah, I mean, he's not wrong. It's still a big fight. What he is wrong about, however, is that Joshua doesn't have options. Anthony Joshua has lots of options.
So many of those guys on the PBC side of things, name-dropping Anthony Joshua.
Quite a few who ain't even in the running.
Chris Arreola, Luis Ortiz. Ways back, I think unbeaten Frankie Sanchez mentioned something about wanting a Joshua fight as well. Something like that.
I thought I saw something a few weeks ago.
Ideally, Wilder should come back in the spring, like March. The preference would be probably Usyk, Joshua, or Ruiz. And then some scenario, whoever the fight first was, then the second fight, we'd do that. I wouldn't assume 3 fight, but 2.
Talking about what sounds like a multi-fight engagement?
With Anthony Joshua, though, in truth, because Shelley and Deontay won't concede to being the B-side to Anthony Joshua, because they won't make that concession, I don't think the fight happens.
I really don't.
I'm not going to beat around the bush. I'm saying it outright. In order to make things happen, you have to concede to being the B-side because you ain't got the same marquee value this kid's got. That's always been the situation. That's always been the case. And that's why you're spending more time talking about him than he's spending talking about you.
I don't even know that we can take Shelley serious about actually wanting to fight Anthony Joshua, because if you were serious, you would have opened up that dialogue with Eddie a long time ago.
You could have had those preliminary conversations behind the scenes with Eddie ahead of the Helenius fight, so that after the Helenius fight, you've got some traction. You will have actually gotten somewhere. But if what you're expecting is for Anthony Joshua and his team to wait for the outcome of your fight to be decided,
those guys ain't gonna put his career on hold for you. They don't need you to make money.
But you might need them. Just the other day, boxing insider Rick Glacier said he's hearing on the grapevine that the box office numbers for Wilder's pay-per-view this past weekend are not encouraging at all. And this news is coming at a time when Deontay Wilder and Andy Ruiz may be ordered to fight by way of the WBC in order to crown Tyson Fury's next mandatory challenger. You know, I thought the Wilder versus Helenius fight, really the Wilder comeback fight, I thought it would do decent numbers at the box office, between 3 and 4, 300,000 to 400,000 buys. If it didn't do that, well, what's an Andy Ruiz fight going to do at the box office?
You know what this tells me? This tells me that Anthony Joshua, in spite of coming off of 2 back-to-back losses, he's still the cash cow of this division. He's still the cash cow at heavyweight.
You've got more guys vying for an Anthony Joshua fight than either a Tyson Fury fight or an Usyk fight.
The name I keep hearing guys calling out at heavyweight is Anthony Joshua.
They want a Joshua fight more than they want a goddamn title shot. Even funnier is that he doesn't actually need any of these guys. Eddie Hearn mentioned something about an Anthony Joshua world tour, to where he goes to these different locations around the world, you know, like China for a Zhilei Zhang, Australia for a Dempsey McKean, then back to the UK for a Dillian White rematch.
They can make a lot of money just doing that, without having to deal with any of these outliers.
Without having to play phone tag with Shelley Finkel and Deontay Wilder and constantly rehatching that conversation. Who really expects Deontay Wilder to cross over to DAZN? Because he'd have to fight Anthony. Anthony is exclusively contracted to DAZN moving forward. That's where he fights.
If you're not going to do that, you're not trying to, then fuck off.
Fuck off already.
Wilder versus Ruiz is set to be officially ordered at the WBC's convention next month as a final eliminator to determine Tyson Fury's next mandatory challenger. With that order looming, the conversation could quickly become, we tried to get Anthony in the ring, but they wouldn't respond to us, so here's Andy Ruiz. Kind of shyster tactics you should be used to him from Shelly Finkel and Deontay.
If the order comes down sometime next month, in November, you could conceivably see the fight between Deontay and Andy in the first quarter of 2023, presumably March, which Shelly Finkel mentioned.
When he's looking to bring Deontay Wilder back. Deontay Wilder, who in the last 12 months has only fought all of one round. Hell, less than one round.
Boxing insider Rick Glacier says the figures for Deontay Wilder's box office fight, they're not encouraging. They're surprisingly low.
You have to wonder if Deontay's big ring return, after all this time away, absence making the heart grow fonder,
You would have thought that the pay-per-view were a box office hit, box office smash, at least a nominal success. But if it wasn't, and it's the way that Rick says it is, well,
how many pay-per-views can they sell with Andy Ruiz and Deontay Wilder?
with support from the Chicano fight fans, those fight fans that might be interested in rooting their man on, Andy Ruiz, and potentially seeing him win this fight, would support from them be enough to make that pay-per-view a box office smash, a box office success?
Can they get the numbers right to entice both fighters to fight each other? Bring them to the table. Can they do it?
Which network is going to carry it? Who's going to foot the bill? Who's going to pay for it? Because industry insiders speculate this will be Fox's final year in the sport of boxing. And if by some chance those sentiments ring true, will Deontay and Andy, will they be going back to Showtime?
I know a lot of boxing fans that don't care for the business of boxing and its infrastructure, but you do have to wonder who's going to pay for this because somebody has to.
Somebody has to in order to bring them to the table. Somebody has to in order to make this thing happen.
Myself,
I think it's an intriguing matchup of former champions. I'd purchase the pay-per-view.
well, I don't think that sentiment is unanimous. I don't think that sentiment is across the board.
While the fighters themselves may think that they can fight at a fixed rate,
Interest from the fight fans isn't fixed.
it's hard to know what this would do at the box office.